Thank you, everybody, so much for coming to today's on-farm recharge workshop. It's great to have you all here. My name is Sam Williams. I'm a project manager for sustainable conservation, and today I'll kind of be helping out as the MC for this workshop. So I'm going to share my screen and get us going. All right, so thanks so much for coming, everybody. Great to have you here. So today's workshop on-farm recharge, this train the trainer, is really about sharing information, resources, and skills for on-farm recharge implementation. And we want to help you build knowledge and be able to effectively guide growers or your properties through on-farm recharge. For today's workshop, we're going to have two halves. The first hour or so is going to be presentations from our kind of resident experts here at Sustainable Conservation on some of the key pieces of recharge. And the second half is going to be a grower question and answer panel, where our moderator will ask some of the most common questions, and then we'll open up the space for you all to ask any questions that you may have to some experienced practitioners of recharge. So just another note that we will share out slides, resources after this email. After this workshop. So you will get in an email the slide deck that we're using, the links that we mentioned, all of that information. So you will be able to have access to that shortly following the workshop today. And finally, I also just want to note that today's workshop is part of a larger project that's supported by the USDA, by American pistachio growers, and in partnership with Fresno State and the California Water Institute. So big thanks to those folks and our partners. All right. So really quickly about our organization, Sustainable Conservation, we advance the collaborative stewardship of California's land, air, and water for the benefit of nature and people. And one example of the way that we've done this over the last decade is through our Water for the Future program and its efforts around supporting on-farm recharge in the state of California. So today's presenters are all key members of this program, and there has been a bit of a switch up in some of our presenters from the advertised materials, but you are in very good hands today with Richael Young, the Senior Director, Rogell Rogers, our agronomist, and Aysha Massell, our program director of the Water for the Future program. All right, so getting into the kind of the content that we're going to be covering today in these presentations, we're kind of breaking this down into, building the fundamentals and helping you learn how to address some of these most common questions and these key areas. So why do on-farm recharge? How much does it cost and what incentives are available? How do I actually select a site? Are there water quality considerations I need to keep in mind? All of these types of questions. All right, so jumping into the content, we're going to start off in the kind of big picture. Why do on-farm recharge? And you're in very good hands with Richael Young, who will take it over and share with you all. Thanks, Richael.
Great. Thanks so much, Sam. Great to meet you all. Really excited to be participating in this workshop today. So go ahead and next slide, Sam. So as you'll likely know, groundwater is a really important resource in the Central Valley and in the San Joaquin Valley. For decades, though, we have this situation of having pumped more water out of the ground than nature can put back in, and this is a situation known as groundwater overdraft. This has led to all kinds of undesirable results, including declining water tables, wells that are drying up, land subsidence, and increased pumping costs. So now with the Sustainable Groundwater Management Act, SGMA, being now in effect, local agencies, groundwater sustainability agencies, are required to bring groundwater use back into balance. So that can mean either pumping less, putting more water back in, or more likely doing a bit of both. Next slide. As we can see, if we kind of continue on the business as usual, we have pretty severe groundwater overdraft. The Sacramento Valley is in decent shape. The San Joaquin Valley definitely experiencing some declines. in the Tulare Basin is in the most dire situation. So this is why it's important for us to curb groundwater overdraft and address these issues. So next slide. So one of the most promising ways for us to address this imbalance is through on-farm recharge, which is going to be the topic of our workshop today. And this is the intentional use of using agricultural land to store and absorb excess surface waters during wet years. What's great about this solution is it really turns growers and farms into being part of the solution by replenishing local aquifers and also offering potential benefits to those growers and landowners. So what we see here is kind of an illustration of the water cycle. So on the right-hand side, you can see precipitation coming down in the form of snowpack and rainfall, it coming down into creeks and streams and filling reservoirs that can get released into canals and ditches. On kind of the left-hand side, you can see a dedicated recharge basin that is percolating water back down into the aquifer. But we're going to focus on the practice to the right of that, where you see this intentional application of surface water flows on active farmland. So next slide. Okay, so what I want to get into next is kind of talking about some of the costs and incentives that are available for participating in this practice. So in other words, what's in it for me? So let's talk about some of those costs and benefits. So first up, costs. There are a number of costs related to doing on-farm recharge, so you definitely want to go into this with eyes wide open. There can be a number of direct costs, so the cost of the water itself, any infrastructure such as pumps or conveyance to get that water to the field, labor and management, and other O&M expenses. There are some opportunity costs that are potentially there. So those can be in the form of risks of crop loss or reduced yield, any foregone crop income for lands that are taken out of production. We're going to really focus on talking how to minimize those opportunity costs through kind of carefully putting the right amount of water on the right types of lands with the right types of crops. So that's really going to be the topic of Rogell's conversation and presentation. And then other cost considerations are regulatory and permitting hurdles. What folks don't realize is that groundwater recharge is a very cost-effective solution for increasing water supplies relative to other source water. So folks often talk about, oh, well, let's just do seawater desal or let's expand our reservoirs. Those can be very expensive solutions when you compare them to groundwater recharge. So you can see the numbers here. Importantly, that band between $90 an acre foot to $1,100 an acre foot represents kind of the different project types that you might have with groundwater recharge. So that $90 an acre foot is more of the on-farm recharge example, whereas the $1,100 an acre foot is more representative of a dedicated recharge basin. So extremely cost effective for increasing groundwater supplies. Okay, so let's start talking about incentives for doing on-farm recharge. So these incentives that we're going to be talking about come from a report that we published in May of 2023. It's the Central Valley Groundwater Recharge Incentives and Strategies report. There's a QR code here if you want to scan that and get access to it. We also will be sending these out in the post-meeting materials. So, you can also get that report from there. But let's take a look at an overview of the different types of incentives that are offered in the San Joaquin Valley. So first up, I just want to recognize that there is a range of different types of incentives, and I'll be walking through what each of these mean and where we found they were existing as of May of 2023. What's really fascinating to us is that only 2 years later, This report is massively out of date. There's just been so much innovation in program design around recharge, and especially on-farm recharge that it's not often that you need to update a report in such a quick amount of time, but there's been just a huge growth in recharge programs across the San Joaquin Valley. So I'll talk about that update later, but let's start looking at the different types of incentives that exist for on-farm recharge. So first up is maybe one that isn't an obvious example for a recharge example, but increasingly to address reducing groundwater demands, there are GSAs that have what are called fallowing leases, or essentially leasing land and then fallowing it or turning it into idle lands. These are really good opportunities, just kind of no-brainers for places to do recharge because you don't have the kind of crop health considerations that you do on active farmland. So, and you can also extend the amount of water application on those fields. So, thinking about how to get the most money from, these kinds of incentive programs, you can start, if you've got clients that are already getting fallowing leases and then can stack an additional incentive on top of that for doing recharge, getting those stacked payments often makes a lot of sense. Next slide. Next is reduced or no cost water for recharge. So I mentioned that recharge water or source water can be a direct cost, but an increasing number of agencies are reducing the costs of that surface water, which typically comes from irrigation or other water districts, to incentivize taking that water in wet years and using it for recharge. Next up is cost share programs that help with either subsurface recharge or more broadly other types of conveyance or infrastructure that's needed for doing recharge. Again, this is very out of date. It's much more expansive than what's shown here now, but there are cost share opportunities that help to cover some of the infrastructure or other direct costs for doing recharge. Groundwater pumping credits is a really powerful incentive, and this one is definitely growing in popularity. So in this case, you get a portion, usually a portion, it's typically not a one-for-one credit, but let's say, your client puts 100 acre-feet back into the ground through recharge, and they can get a credit of, say, 75 acre-feet towards their groundwater pumping allocation. So this is a really great way in those kind of constrained, water limited places where you've got a pumping allocation, a good way to put a little bit more on your water budget and give yourself more pumping credits. We also see some surface water bill credits. So this is, do some recharge and you get some kind of a credit on your surface water bill. And then finally, a flood easement. These are a little bit rarer, but they're definitely quite interesting. So the example here is that a particular landowner had, some property that was flood prone, and so they entered into a flood easement. So in those years where there are especially high flows, that land then is no longer used for crop production, but is instead used as kind of floodplain space. So obviously can't use that land for ag production when it's being used for a floodplain, but in the other years it can be used for crop production. As I mentioned, we're currently working on updating this report. This is a partnership that we have with the Almond Board of California. So we'll be sending out a survey to water districts and groundwater sustainability agencies to get a more up-to-date picture on the different types of strategies and incentives that are offered for groundwater recharge. In the meantime, we really encourage you to ask the water districts or GSAs that are serving you and your clients about incentives that are available for recharge. There are also increasing opportunities for on-farm recharge. There's a focus especially on projects that have multi-benefit outcomes. So these are recharge projects that have benefits for drinking water, ecosystems, or other flood risk reduction. So if you have a project in mind that would have more benefits than aquifer replenishment alone, that's really something to keep in mind and think about how you can, kind of monetize those additional benefits through recharge. So to put some of these funding opportunities on your radar, some of the emerging funding opportunities are number one, the multi-benefit land repurposing program that's made available through the California Department of Conservation, Land Flex through the Department of Water Resources. And then there is some corporate funding as well that can help with some of these projects too. So what you can do, importantly, help growers evaluate if on-farm recharge is right for them in their fields. You can encourage growers to really engage and get in touch with their water districts and GSAs to encourage the adoption of incentives if they don't already have them, as this is a really important way to scale the adoption of recharge. And then if you, have some ideas or project opportunities that would have multi-benefit outcomes, please feel free to get in touch with us and we'd be happy to evaluate those and put you in touch with the right folks that can help with some of the funding opportunities. So with that, thank you so much for your time and I'll hand it back to Sam.
Thanks so much, Rochelle. Great. So just a reminder, I haven't seen any questions in the chat yet, but if something does come up, feel free to put it in the chat. Otherwise, you can hold those questions for later with our question and answer panel. Great. So now, kind of moving into the nuts and bolts of implementation, that site selection, that the real meat of this is going to be Rogell Rogers taking you on that journey, and you're in good hands. So Rogell, I'll pass it off to you.
Hello, everyone. I'm glad all of you could join us. And I want to say to all our new uh, collaborators, our current collaborators, and past collaborators, thank you for your collaboration with Sustainable Conservation Organization. Um, because I don't believe we can forward the on-farm recharge efforts in the Central Valley without your collaboration. It's all about collaboration. And today, I just want to review the technical services fundamentals that our uh, organization offers to farmers who are interested in on-farm recharge. And I like to think of them, I like to think of our technical services as the considerations for achieving successful on-farm recharge safely. Next slide. So our technical services on-farm recharge guidance is basically, I consider it a checklist. It has three categories, three main categories. One is site selection, and that category is subdivided into four other categories. One being, do I have surface water availability? Two, do I have conveyance? Do I have the ability with infrastructure to move the water from point A, whether that be a lake, stream, or a river, or the irrigation district canal, to point B, where I plan to sink the water at my farm parcel, farm recharge, for example? Do I have the correct water rights? Did I conduct a recharge suitability analysis? Using one of the public computer tools like SAGB, Soil Agricultural Banking Index. And category two, field preparation, field implementation, and troubleshooting. This is growers' domain. These are the things that growers do every day in crop production. And last but not least, category three, monitoring of the on-farm recharge event, recording the event, and reporting the event. Very important. Next slide, please. How do I get water for recharge? Well, I'm going to pretend to be Farmer Rogers. And one morning I walked out to my turnout gate to find a head of water in the district canal ditch full of water. And this is late October when normally you don't expect to see it. But in this case, we had a very wet year and the irrigation district is releasing water early to make room for expected rain. So first thing I do is, I didn't realize we were going to have water, so I call my irrigation district and I ask them, hey, there's a head of water here. Is this water available? And they tell me, yes. Actually, you can have the water if you want to do recharge. You can take it. We're charging $10 an acre foot versus the normal $170 per acre foot during the growing season. Okay, great. So I have water availability. The next thing is, I'm sorry, you go back. Stay with me. So the next thing is, do I have the conveyance? Do I have the infrastructure? So I have my irrigation team go out and dig up the underground uh, valves for my underground flood system. And fortunately, I didn't dig up my underground flood system from 25, 30 years ago. So all I need to do is charge the system, pump water into it, and uh, to the right there, you see that I have water flowing through my underground system, providing flood surface water to my almond field. Next slide. And do I have water rights? Do I have the correct water rights? Most of the Central Valley farmers, landowners, majority of them have what's called appropriative water rights or riparian water rights, or a lot of folks fall within irrigation district boundaries and they have access to water under the irrigation district water rights. So in some cases, however, this irrigation district water rights uh, can be a problem for folks who are just outside of the district. They could be adjacent to, their property could be adjacent to an irrigation district canal, but they don't have the permit to access or divert that water. And this is a problem for the Central Valley at large in our efforts to conduct on-farm recharge. We need to remedy this situation. And one of the ways that I think the governor of California, Newsom, did in 2023 wet year, he issued an emergency order to allow for diversion of flood flows for reduction of flood risk and conducting on-farm recharge without a permit. And then most recently, we had 1242.1 law passed to allow for emergency flood diversion that has to meet certain conditions. For example, the district water managers must proclaim that we have a flood emergency risk. And if you're going to take water, you have to report the acre foot to the proper authorities. Next slide. And one of the last features of site selection in the technical services guidance that we provide is select a suitable field. Select the best field that's going to give you maximum recharge. And we do that by using one of the tools, mapping tools developed to determine how well or how effective your field can take on water. And that too is called SAGB, or Soil Agricultural Groundwater Banking Index. Let's focus on SAGB. SAGB is a tool that gives us 6 different ratings from excellent to very good, and it has weighted indices of slope, soil type, clay layers, underlying geology, and depth to groundwater. And You can get to this tool by the highlighted website. And this tool was developed by Tobio Jean, lead scientist at UC Davis, Cooperative Extension, and many others like Helen Dalkey, Graham Fogg, and Thomas Harder, to name a few. Now, this snapshot, if you can see, there's a small circle in the middle that outlines the site that I've input. Dark green strip with light green surrounding it. So it's an excellent to moderately good field, which is a good choice for conducting on-farm recharge. Next slide. So now that I've completed my site selection, for example, um, I want to go on to field preparation, implementation, and troubleshooting. Earlier, I mentioned this is grower's domain. Uh, Next slide. In many of our pilot partner collaborations, I have several examples of field preparation, implementation, and the troubleshooting that have been conducted by other farmers. But many farmers have their own way of doing these practices because they're regular field practices to grow crops. And for example, preparation of the field is a job that's generally handed to the tractor department to set up, berming and checks to hold water in a specific location of the field. And the irrigation department implements by supervising the water application and watching for any problems to troubleshoot and correct that. For example, if we get a breach in water that leads out to public road, they're there to correct that. Next slide, please. And how do we set up my field for recharge? The previous uh, the previous point concerning implementation or preparation, implementation, and troubleshooting, we'll go into more detail a little later in the second half when we talk directly with experienced recharge farmers. But in this case, setting up the field, Don Cameron, one of the pioneers of on-farm recharge, decided to recharge using excess surface flows in 2023 in early spring, just post bloom on his pistachio field using waters that he diverted from Kings River at his Terra Nova Ranch down in Fresno. And what he did was piped into the field, surrounded the field with 3-foot berms, and started flooding it and reached a head height of about 2 feet. This is basically in lieu irrigation, where you're using the surface flows to not only irrigate your crop, cultivate it, but also recharge. Normally, we don't recommend this type of recharge. We specify recharge during the dormant season of a crop. But again, uh, Don is one of the pioneers of on-farm recharge, and he pushes the envelope to see just what we can do. Next slide, please. Another example of on-farm recharge. You can actually cut furrows in between plant lines to allow for water to sink into the soil and percolate down easier. Also to the right, there's flood irrigation, where you set up intermittent berms and checks to promote gradual movement of the water in line with the slope of the field, maybe 2 to 3 to 6 to 8 plant lines at a time. reach a certain head height, and then breach a check and allow it to move on to the next set of plant lines. Next slide, please. On-farm recharge examples continue. To the left here, dormancy application. This field was an excellent field per SAGB rating, and the farmer during the winter decided to encircle the field with berms about 1 foot high. And believe it or not, because it was an excellent field, almost pure sand, the farmer left the pump water in through a lay flat pipe, gated flat pipe with gates at each plant line to flood the whole field. And do you know the head of water never reached higher than 6 inches because it was taking on water so fast. And then to the right, you've got another example of growing season in surface water, growing season surface water for irrigation, that is. Again, this is an example of in lieu irrigation where you're applying excess surface flows during the growing season to not only cultivate the crop, but to recharge the groundwater. Next slide, please. Now, I want to insert here the concept of how do we protect my crop doing on-farm recharge. And why? Because many farmers, one of the frequently asked questions is, by farmers who participate in on-farm recharge is how long do I open my turnout gate and when do I close my turnout gate before I start having plant risk issues like oxygen deprivation, for example. So over the past 8 years, sustainable conservation has developed what's called a crop compatibility calendar that encompasses several different cropping systems and the necessary field operations. And those crops that we've looked at include almond, walnut, pistachios, alfalfa, wine grapes, fallow fields, pasture, and that crop compatibility calendar, we've informed it by using the Department of Water Resources Integrated Water Flow Modeling Data Calculator, acronymed IDC. So you've got the compatibility calendar modeling that we combine with the IDC, and the application rates avoid soil saturation in excess of 75%. It calls for dry down intervals between successive 5-day recharge events. And the crop compatibility calendar, it provides the daily prediction of maximum recharge amount. Sorry about that. And uh, where was it? The crop compatibility calendar provides the daily maximum recharge amount applied on a field parcel based on analysis of SAGB soil categories, crop or land use, as well as crop biological processes like etc., and necessary cultural operations. So we're just at the point of looking at these models and comparing them to real-time data, and DWR and sustainable conservation are now at the point of asking the broader Floodmar network to review the process that we've used to assess the approach and develop guidance for growers. Next slide, please. So originally, managing on-farm recharge to reduce potential crop health risk was a question that was brought up in 2017 by the research done by Bashan and Associates. Phil Bashan is a private researcher who does field analysis. And in 2017, he was contracted with Sustainable Conservation and Don Cameron to do recharge analysis at a walnut field at his Terra Nova Ranch, 10-foot depth, 10-inch depth analysis of oxygen and soil percent moisture. So oxygen depth, oxygen drops at a steady rate after water application begins and salt moisture content increases. So, next slide. I'm sorry, go back one real quick. I want to relate the parameters that are important here are, you notice the recharge starts on August 13th, represented by the red line showing percent moisture, and it maxes out at about 75% moisture. And the correlating oxygen level is at 6 kilopascals. So those parameters, keep those in mind as we extrapolate into a cross section of soil. Next slide. So what we have here is a cross section of soil to the right, the y-axis showing the wilting point field capacity, and the next line up is 1/4 moisture. Next line up is half, 1/2 saturation or moisture, and the big dotted line is 3/4% moisture or 75% moisture. The top line is saturation. Bottom x-axis, days of application. To the left, the y-axis is ending water content in inches. So we have the ending water content on almonds in an excellent soil SAGB rating. So this field has excellent rating for uptaking and infiltration of water. And the crop compatibility calendar with the IDC recommends 24 inches of water to be applied in 5 successive days, 2 acre-feet per day. And you can see that the application started right away, and it continues for 5 days just before we reach 3/4 or 75% moisture. Then we shut the turnout gate and allow the water to dissipate down to below field capacity for a day or two. And as that water dissipates, so does the oxygen level increase in the soil back to what it was originally before recharge. So to protect the plants from lack of oxygen. Next slide, please. So I say that I give you this information to let you know that there's modeling to determine how much water to apply to be safe. I'm a grower. I've never grown using models. So I say that to say this, the modeling has some ingredients that make scientific sense to me. So I think we should look at it to help us have some basis for guidance for farmers to protect their investments. And where are we on our technical assistance guidance list? We're at monitoring and reporting. Next slide. Monitoring and reporting is so important. Documentation is important for us to establish guidance for future farmers to conduct on-farm recharge. In this particular case of documentation developed by the Madera Irrigation District, we have to the x-axis all the crops that can potentially be recharged, and we have to the y-axis to the left amount recharged in acre feet. We can see that this was an estimated water recharge, net water recharge, after we deducted ET, January through July of 2023. The first crop with the highest recharge amount was grapes at about, 5,700 acre feet, followed by corn, sorghum, and Sudan at about, 3,000 acre feet, followed by almonds, which was close to 3,000 acre foot. And then say 3 pistachios at about 1,000 acre foot, followed by fallow, peaches and nectarines, plums, prunes, and apricots. But the point I want to make here is in 2023, the dedicated Madera Irrigation District micro basins water applied was 18,702 acre feet. This is a 234% increase over the data recorded in 2019. There was only about 8,000, a little over 8,000 acre feet dedicated to micro basins in 2019. In 2023, total estimated recharge amount for on-farm recharge, all crops that you see here in this graph, uh, there was about 13,430 acre feet. Uh, but when you compare that to 2019, there was about a 126% increase over 2019, where they only recharged about 10,700 acre feet. Next slide. We sustainable conservation was contracted by the uh, Natural Resource Conservation Service, USDA, NRCS, uh, to help them launch their 2022-23 on-farm recharge piloting program through EQIP to determine if the on-farm recharge would be a a sustainable watering program that they could incentivize through reimbursements on a continual basis year after year. And that's what this program was all about. There was reimbursement by NRCS up to 75%. And then the irrigation district, Madera Irrigation District, of course, uh, came in and offered another 15% credit towards the uh, next year's bill. And so the achievements were one, the NRCS program built a micro basin that had a 18-acre footprint with 60-acre capacity, and they recharged in 23 over 2,000 acre feet, which is a great achievement. And for the on-farm recharge, where we're flooding an existing field, uh, there was a total recharge of about 4,680 acre feet. And there were about, 22, 23 growers, and I believe there was approximately, 2,800 acre feet. I'm sorry, 2,800 acres covered across that total participation of 23 growers, averaging about 1.7 acre feet per acre. This is why data is important. So we have something to reflect on to determine where we started, what steps we've followed, and where we are today, so that we have information to pass on. Next slide. And we can also have data to promote incentivization of on-farm recharge. Now, what are the benefits of on-farm recharge? Most folks say, yeah, 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 I know. It helps replenish groundwater. Well, there's more than that. This on-farm recharge is a grower implemented, grower controlled practice, a sustainable practice. It's probably the most cost-effective method we have. And sustainable practice it is. It is a sustainable water practice. Um, it definitely can help us dilute root zone salinity. Many farmers are familiar with this. You have to have some periodic leaching of salts that can build up in the root zone and can can reduce growth and development and result in reduced yields. So periodic leaching of the soil through on-farm recharge can help reduce the salinity tolerance uh, levels, or the salinity in relationship to salinity tolerance that each crop has, and promote growth. We can restore overdrafted aquifers. We can meet Sigma regulations. We can promote balancing our water, put back as much water as we take out, and promote farm longevity, keep people on the farms. And we can potentially dilute legacy nitrate nitrogen, a subject that my colleague Aysha Massell will cover in the next session. Next slide, please. This is a tracking recharge water field sheet that I generally pass on to all our pilot partners. It's important to do in-field data recording. The important features are date, start time, flow meter reading at start time, stop time, and flow meter reading at stop time. Um, this helps us determine net, not water applied, but net water recharge to the aquifer. And then there's several questions to the upper right that a farmer should be asking themselves and answering as they do on-farm recharge to develop a database. Next slide, please. What are the next steps? The next steps that I believe are imperative for all technical service advisors in academia, in cooperative extension, field crop advisors, pesticide advisors. We can provide guidance to farmers uh, at the ground level for on-farm recharge. We can uh, we can promote nitrogen and pesticide management plans that reduce the risk of these chemicals getting into the groundwater. We can use less toxic pesticides, more appropriate nitrogen products. We can promote grower recharge networks through collaboration for on-farm recharge in water districts. And we can facilitate educational outreach to growers in irrigation districts. We can develop field days and workshops and webinars to promote on-farm recharge. We can help growers set up pilot sites. Next. Any questions?
All right. Well, we can make sure that we include both of those in the resource packet, Rogell. So thank you very much for that presentation. A lot of great info in there.
Thank you.
Um, so now moving onward into our kind of final content area, which is really around water quality considerations that you might want to be aware of. So to lead this, Aysha, please take it from here.
Hi, everyone. Thanks for being here today. I want to walk through how we can better integrate groundwater quality considerations into on-farm recharge. And on these slides, on-farm recharge, we refer to it as OFR, just so you know. So this is a critical topic because the way we design and operate our on-farm recharge projects are really, could help to protect and even improve our drinking water sources. Next slide. So our main goal when thinking about this topic is how this, or on-farm recharge, can turn into this. So in other words, how can on-farm recharge result in clean drinking water, or at least not worsen water quality? So as an organization that's been working with growers, districts, and communities on groundwater recharge for over a decade, we at Sustainable Conservation continue to explore this topic. And I'm excited to share some findings today of our previous work and then also tell you about our current efforts. Next slide. So what are potential water quality concerns during on-farm recharge? Well, there's legacy contaminants, and these are, contaminants that are in the soil below the root zone that are just kind of sitting there from decades past, years and decades past of land use practices. So these typically have, kind of a load of pesticides or fertilizers. They're just sitting there that could be potentially mobilized during recharge. And that extra ponding, that'll push it through the system. There's also current and future agricultural inputs that are applied to fields. Again, these are mostly pesticides and fertilizers, and we're going to dive into this a little bit in this presentation. There's also source water. So we're fortunate in the Central Valley. A lot of our water comes from a very clean source, the Sierra Nevada mountain ranges. And so we don't really have to worry about this, but that is also another potential contaminant. And then there's other contaminants as well that I'll touch on a little bit later in the presentation. So if you go on to the next slide. So we produced two of these papers back in 2021. The paper on the left is an overview of the current research related to changes in salts and nitrate in groundwater due to on-farm recharge. So it's basically a literature review. The paper on the right is a user-friendly version or summary of that work, and it's focused on nitrate only. And so the following slides, most of them show work from this paper on the right. And we'll include links to both papers in our resource packet, so you can check that out later on. Next slide. So one of the main things is that we have to acknowledge that nitrate contamination in the groundwater in the Central Valley it's a pretty big deal, and it's likely to get worse before it gets better, just because of all that legacy nitrate that's already in the soil that's going to be moving its way through the system. So here is a map. You can see groundwater concentrations above the maximum contaminant level, noted in red. And it's probably going to get worse before it gets better as we move that kind of legacy contaminants through the system. And one thing we want to say is that recharge might influence the timing and concentration of how this legacy nitrogen affects the groundwater, but it's not going to influence the total amount, because that amount already exists. So next slide. So one way to think about this is looking here, you will see how legacy nitrogen continues to affect groundwater quality years after it was applied. So imagine that each of these red bars is a year's worth of nitrogen application. Those thinner bars on the top represent less nitrogen applied due to regulations under the Irrigated Lands Regulatory Program. And the thicker bars represent kind of like previous, where people were just applying a lot of nutrients. And so, it's still affecting groundwater, even though there is a lot of reduction in nitrate leaching in recent years. So go on to the next slide. So if you apply recharge water, it's going to actually kind of push that front down. And that recharge water, depending on site conditions, could either dilute concentrations that are in the groundwater, because we're adding a bunch of good clean water, or it could actually temporarily spike nitrate concentrations in groundwater because we're moving that kind of faster through the system. Another way to look at this is also in our paper. This is a conceptual graph only. And in this situation, we're looking at, let's say, a site where the existing groundwater quality is good, but we have a high legacy nitrogen load in the vadose zone, kind of below the root zone. So it's just sitting there. So if we add a bunch of water, we can push that nitrate into the groundwater. So on the x-axis here, you see time up to 50 years. And on the y-axis is nitrate concentration, which is in milligrams of nitrate as nitrogen per liter. And that red line that you see is a maximum contaminant level, or MCL, of 10 milligrams per liter. So above that line, the water is unsafe for human consumption. It can lead to a lot of health issues. So in the no recharge scenario, that brown band that you see there, you see that legacy nitrogen is moving through the system, and at some point it's going to peak and then dip down, because ideally we're not leaching more nitrogen into the soil or into the vadose zone. And so that peak could either occur above the MCL or below the MCL, and that we just don't know. So that's that kind of uncertainty, that thickness of that band. In the case of when we put recharge water onto that same site, we might actually push that legacy nitrogen into the groundwater quicker, but it's also likely to resolve quicker as well. So we might have an initial spike of nitrate concentrations, but then it dies out, assuming we're not adding more to the system. Next slide. So in this situation, we're actually starting out above the MCL. So the groundwater quality is already poor. And in this case, the no recharge scenario, it's eventually gonna die down and kind of peter out, but it might take a long time. Whereas if we're adding a bunch of good quality water, we might actually be able to reduce that nitrate concentration below the MCL at a much quicker time frame than otherwise would have occurred. So we have the situation where recharge can improve or temporarily worsen water quality, and it really depends on site conditions. So now we're going to talk about how can we avoid any further water quality issues beyond the legacy nitrogen. So go on to the next slide. So as technical assistance providers, you're really kind of ground zero for this work. And you're probably all familiar with this, is we really want to have good agronomic practices, reducing nitrate, leaching below the root zone. So this is a graphic produced by the Almond Board of California, and it's basically outlining the 4 R's of nutrient management. So this is applying nitrogen at the right rate, at the right time, in the right place, like right around the soil, the root zone, excuse me, and then using the right source. And so you can really work with the growers to make sure that the plants are basically getting spoon-fed their nitrogen as they need them and not wasting that nitrogen below the root zone. And that really makes economic sense as well. Another key recommendation is water efficiency. It's kind of related to this, that you don't want to apply the nitrogen and then have it leach down below the root zone because there's too much irrigation happening. So water efficiency is also key to part of this. Go on to the next one. Yeah, and so cover crops might actually be another agronomic practice that might be really useful here. This is something that we're exploring right now. We all know that cover crops can really improve soil health, so it's good for the crops, but they can also scavenge residual soil nitrate. So if you're able to manage them correctly, they could actually take up any soil nitrate, maybe at the end of the season before you're going to be doing recharge during the winter season. So this will lead to reduced leaching under on-farm recharge. And this document on the right is a new report out. It's really geared towards growers. It's about cover cropping and has a lot of great information in there. And like I said, we're working on a research project right now, understanding how cover cropping and recharge can work, how they work together, and how we can have good benefits for both practices. So another thing to think about, practically speaking, is your site selection. And Rogell talked about good site selection in terms of how to get water into the ground and minimize impacts to crops. In this, what I'm saying here is more about the water quality aspect. So you also want to include that in your thinking about site selection. So you might want to select fields that have excellent nutrient and pest management, both in the past, but also intending into the future. You may want to pick crops that have low nutrient needs, such as grape and alfalfa. Also maybe low pesticide crops as well. You want to pick crops that can tolerate saturation, and also pick areas with sandy and coarse textured soils. And that allows that kind of dilution factor. You're able to add a lot of water and it dilutes any potential contaminants that might be sitting there in that soil. And then let's say you have your field all selected and you're starting to recharge. Some management considerations. You really do not want to apply nutrients or pesticides directly before a recharge event. It not only wastes that resource and a lot of money, but it also could potentially move into the groundwater. And really, the more time you have between applying any chemicals or nutrients and the recharge event itself is the better. So just kind of maximizing that time between application and recharge. You also want to maximize recharge during the dormant and fallow periods. And we're lucky here because most of the time when the water is available is during the dormant season. So it goes together. And that really helps us to not have to make choices between recharging and any cultural practices that need to happen in the field. And then also, longer duration recharge versus short pulsed events. There's some research out there that there's more mineralization of nitrogen when it's short and pulsed events. And so you might want to look at longer duration recharge, but of course you have to balance that with your crop tolerance for saturation. So something to think about. Next slide. And these regional scale considerations are typically more at the irrigation district level or water manager district, but it's still good to keep in mind for the growers and for the technical assistance providers, just kind of keep the larger context in mind. So just like pumping, if you're adding a bunch of water in one place, you might change or shift the groundwater gradient. And so you just want to be aware of how that may impact people around you. And related to that is really thinking about nearby drinking water wells. If there's nearby wells, definitely think about the water quality impacts of any recharge you may be doing. And it may be that the communities nearby want that water. They're maybe running out of water and they'd rather have some risk of water quality, but also and be able to treat it versus no water at all. But definitely, think about that and consult with them. And then if you are going to prioritize recharge, that you may want to consider recharge basins instead of on-farm recharge. And that's just so that there's no conflict between the crop needs and then the drinking water quality. So it's just something to think about. Another thing to think about is the water availability. So let's say you have 100 acres. Rather than spreading a limited amount of water on all 100 acres, you could actually focus, let's say, on 10 acres. And that way you're able to add a lot of clean, fresh water into a site. And even if it has some residual nitrogen from years past, you're going to flush that out and eventually dilute the concentrations there. Move on to the next slide, please. Now, we didn't talk about this in our papers, but this is something to bring up. Pesticides are tricky. So some common sense avoiding of any pesticide leaching into groundwater is to use less mobile and less toxic pest and weed control methods. You also maybe want to choose fields that have lower nutrient and pesticide needs. And then whenever possible, maybe utilize integrated pest management to reduce inputs. And so, kind of focusing those approaches on areas that you want to do recharge might be, a useful and wise way forward. Move on to the next one. That being said, there are some chemicals where if you apply them onto your crop, any recharge is prohibited under state law within 6 months of application. So these are the chemicals. I'm not going to attempt to pronounce them. We can also send you a sheet of this so you have it for your resources. But basically, if you're working with growers who want to do recharge, advise them not to use these chemicals, probably at all, but definitely not within 6 months of projected recharge. So going on to the next one. Yes, here we are. So in summary, what can we do to minimize any chemical transport during on-farm recharge? Well, you want to minimize nutrient inputs. You want to maximize the nutrient uptake efficiency. You want to carefully select your pesticides and reduce pesticide use where possible. You want to avoid applying nutrients or pesticides before a recharge event, and really the more time, the better. And then also recharge during the dormant season, not during the growing season. And then also in your site selection, consider the nearby domestic wells or public supply wells, target crops that don't need many chemical inputs, and also target fields that will have access to plenty of water, so you can really dilute any types of leaching that may occur. And finally, last slide. I just want to say what we're working on now. We're currently involved in convening a recharge and water quality technical advisory committee. And our ultimate goal here is to outline a geospatial tool that will help recharge planners situate recharge projects with an eye towards water quality risk reduction. And this TAC is composed of academics, state and federal agency staff, community-based NGOs, water districts, and grower representatives. So we're really trying to bring everyone together to come up with something that's practical and makes sense. And in this effort, we're actually looking at all potential contaminants, not just nitrate, but including nitrate. We're also including pesticides, geogenic contaminants. So these are the heavy metals that are already in our soil, just from geology. These include uranium, arsenic, and chromium, and these can be mobilized due to changes in aquifer conditions, such as more oxygen or less oxygen. So we're looking at that. And then we're also looking at other contaminants like PFAS and 1,2,3-TCP, pathogens, and others. And so we hope to have something to share by the end of 2025. And just to wrap up, I just want to say that, water quality can be a daunting topic here, but with thoughtful planning that considers groundwater quality and not just the quantity, we think recharge projects have a real potential to help improve groundwater quality. And so if we're able to integrate these best practices for nutrient and pesticide management, pay attention to site characteristics and contaminant history, and choose locations that are both hydrologically and agronomically compatible, we think that on-farm recharge becomes not just a tool for recharge, but also a strategy for safe and sustainable water management. So thank you very much. I'll pass it back to Sam.
Great. Thanks so much, Aysha. I'm going to move us onward into our grower panel question and answer session, and pass it back to Rogell to moderate.
Hello again. I am going to lead the Q&A session with two of who I identify as uh, sustainability progressive farmers of today. Uh, Nick Davis uh, and Jimi Valov, two San Joaquin Valley farmers. Next slide. Both of them have experience piloting on-farm recharge events. Uh, Here's Nick Davis and myself. Actually, I got my mouth open because I was sinking in a wet plant line there. And there's Nick, Brian and Nick Davis together, brothers. Cultivating and recharging their field. Next slide. And Jimi Valov, Valov Brothers Farms, uh, American pistachio grower. He is having a little fun in preparation of on-farm recharge in a cover crop that he germinated just prior to recharge in early March of this year. Next slide, please. So, what we have here, we're going to expand on on-farm recharge technical assistance checklist. We're going to zero in on recharge, uh, preparation, implementation, and troubleshooting. And we're going to let the growers talk us through the various preparation, implementation, and troubleshooting methods that they applied. Next slide, please. Nick Davis, Davis Vineyard Farms, Incorporated. At this point, I'd like for Nick to give us a brief introductory. Go ahead, Nick.
Good afternoon, everybody. My name is Nick Davis. I'm with Davis Vineyards in Madera, and I am a recharge professional. I have a master's and PhD in recharge. I'm just kidding. I have none of that. I've just done it once or twice, and I'm going to share my experience with you today. And we farm in Madera County. We farm almonds and wine grapes, and we started our recharge journey in 2022, 2023 when we had all this water. So I'm going to share my experience with you today.
Next slide. Thank you, Nick. And Jimi Valov,
Yeah,
Valov Brothers Farms. Go ahead, Jimi.
awesome. Yeah, I'm just glad to be following Nick. That guy seems pretty enthusiastic. But yeah, if we can go back a couple of slides, I would love to kind of talk about that cover crop I was laying in real quick. And then yeah, just to preface, I'm a little bit nervous. I don't really talk in front of people. I don't really ask questions on Zoom because I'm not that type of person. So I'm outside of my comfort zone right now. But I'm a third generational farmer. I'm 27 years old. I'm a little aware of my youthful ignorance, and so that'll come into play during the process here. But yeah, I'm a young optimist, and my dad's a wise realist, and so we kind of butt heads a lot. So that kind of works, check and balance there. Um, he actually left right now. He said, "I don't want to make you nervous, and I don't want to be laughing when you're talking about your cover crop," and then slammed the door. So um, that's kind of our what we got going on. But we're almond and pistachio growers in Kings and Tulare County. Yeah, I just want to talk about APG real quick. Give them a shout out. They're fabulous at marketing, and they're the reason why the pistachio industry has grown the way that it did. So, shout out to them. And right here, yeah, you can see my conventional block to the right. It flooded. The only reason why cheese weeds down the middle is because we're trying to save money on a per acre basis. And also, when you flood, you can't really get in the field, so we didn't get to it. And then on the left, there's my cover crop, multi-species. That was before we irrigated it, and I'll tell you what, those broadleaves grew 6 foot tall and through the canopy of the trees. My dad about had a heart attack, so in April I kind of mowed it high about 2 foot, and to let the grasses kind of proliferate through that and hopefully go to seed and add to my seed bank there. So yeah, I'm getting into the whole cover cropping thing, and I'm really passionate about it. So yeah, that's about all we got going on here. And it was kind of cool because I was already doing this cover cropping thing before Sustainable Conservation met up with me and said they wanted to do research. So it kind of worked hand in hand there. So yep.
Thank you, Jimmy. Next slide. All right, we're going to get right into the questions here. The number one question I have of both Nick and Jimmy is, as a landowner who has, for example, completed your on-farm recharge technical assistance checklist, that checklist that I've shown multiple times, you've passed in flying colors, um, you're ready to conduct on-farm recharge. What is the first thing that you did, or you recommend you should do to prepare the field for recharge? Go ahead, Nick.
Well, let me first say I might answer this a little differently, but I just watched the whole presentation for the last hour or so. It's been fantastic, and all this technical assistance providers know a lot about groundwater recharge and the science behind it. But from my perspective, man, I didn't know any of that really existed. I mean, obviously we know now about how important it is for water quality, but to answer this question, the first thing that you have to, as a farmer, decide if you want to recharge is, do you want to or don't you? Because if you will get hung up on deciding I mean, if you only have one 40-acre block, then you don't have a site selection. You just got 40 acres to decide if you're going to do it or not do it. So for me, and I was going to say this earlier, is when the water came in 2023, it just showed up. There was no time to consider where, when, how. It was just, let's get the water. Where do we get the water from? What ranch do we put it on? And how many valves should we open? And then the rest is like, I don't know what's going to happen. So as awesome as all the technical advice is, from me, at least the farming perspective was, I just want to put water back in the ground. I'm not sure about all the consequences just yet, but I just know that that's good. That I should do that. And that's kind of my first step, and I would suggest to others is, yes, consider all those things, but also just do it and think twice later.
Hey, Nick, sorry to interrupt. You each have about 2.5 minutes. You're about a minute in.
All right. I'm good. And Jim, if you want to take it from there.
Yeah, definitely. I think farmers have that mentality of just like that switch is flipped and then you just go head on and you run into these problems and you keep chugging along through and keep pushing through, and that's the same thing with recharge. I guess I'll get into later about how old the system is, because there is a whole cascade of issues that happened because of that. But with our conventional block, we kind of took 4 rows and made a check down every 4 row, and then I made a border around the whole field, and that kind of contained the water because our berms aren't quite like berms. They were a little flat in that field, and so I needed to contain the water somehow. So you kind of just irrigate it like that. We were able to open 2 valves and flood 8 rows at a time. And so yeah, there's plenty of problems and repairs that we had to make. And um yeah, I
Yeah,
guess
and Jimmy, can I add though, like,
go ahead.
see, that's funny because I never had that problem, right? Like, I didn't have a flat orchard. I had a vineyard with berms. Like, it was
Yep.
too easy, right? So you had, a bigger barrier to entry than I did. You had to be more motivated, I should say, than for me. And so like but it's like the next grower that's gonna do some on-farm recharge. He may have a hybrid between you and me,
Hmm.
but I can't give him advice. It's just like, I don't know, just go get the water, open a valve and see where it flows. And then go get a tractor real quick
Yep.
and then put up a berm, right?
Yeah, totally. We've done recharge in the past. My dad's really big on flooding. I actually got to slow him down because I'm like, we got credits. We can't be flooding all these freaking fields.
Right.
And yeah, so they kind of knew what to do, but in that field we haven't quite touched in a long time. So and then in the cover crop field, I didn't want to go and make those checks. And so I did what you did and made a border on the outside and kind of connected that border to the berm. And that brought a bunch of issues itself too, because as I was flooding it, it was breaking over the berm on the other side. Um, And so that's exactly what you're trying to avoid by making those checks. And I just didn't want to disturb my cover crop is all, you know.
Yeah.
But yeah, it was a learning process and yep, yeah. That's yeah, my foreman had to take pictures of the flow meters and send me information. And so from that it was, you know, the timing was tagged and I knew exactly how much water was applied. I plugged it into Rogell's spreadsheet and I was able to kind of calculate exactly what was going on those blocks. And so that's an important concept um, as well. So just kind of keeping up, delegating responsibility.
All right. So what did you do to correct that breach on the berm?
I just kept pushing water. You know, I'm not gonna go in the middle of the field and fix every berm, you know. That's
Sure.
just casualty we came across as we were yeah, moving water.
Okay. So it wasn't impacting the road?
Oh no, no. From you know, like we'd select 8 rows to push water down and then it would kick over into the ninth row, you know. And so it was kind of taking longer to reach the other side because of that. So
Gotcha.
just little issues. Everything got water, you know, it just took a little longer than expected. Foreman was complaining about cover crop slowing down the water. I was like, no, it's infiltrating, dude. It's not slowing down. But there's probably, you know, something, you know, physical barrier actually stopping the water and building it up more. I don't know. So
Sure. Next slide. Question 2. Did you face any major challenges in implementing on-farm recharge? And do you have any advice for other growers in those situations? Talk to us. Nick?
No, no, we didn't come across any problems. Just kidding. We had a lot of problems, but that's the thing is that there's just kind of minor problems, right? So like here's the first problem. The first problem was literally day one when we took water on our ranch. We recharged about 2,200 acre feet on our farm. We have, and the day one we took water on. The problem was it was a rainy day when we got the water from our surface water district. So everybody was off work. So my brother and I had to go turn all the valves on, which is fine, but we're like running around, you know, we're opening the valves and we're doing this and go look over there. How much is there water in the pipe? Yes, there is. Okay, close it down. That's the wrong pipe. Like it was just him and and it was kind of nice to be honest with you, but we were enjoying that. But the first problem was we had water on day one and no one was working. So how do you navigate that problem, right? Um, Another problem is I think what happens like the implementation and the management of the water like as it's coming out, right? You don't want to turn it off because you just want to keep the water coming. Like Jimmy's saying, like you don't want to you're not going to stop your water to fix a you know a border. Like it's still on the field. I mean, we're still getting water in the ground. Let's go. We had one 40-acre block that we put almost 9 acre feet of water per acre on. So imagine a column of water 9 feet tall per acre we put on, and that was spectacular. The challenge there, though, of course, is we had that really big. It was a vineyard, and it was we had just winter pruned, right? It was coming out of pruning season, so we have a vineyard row full of winter cane prunings. We had a cover crop on both sides, so the cover crop was coming through the canes. And so, you know, we just let that fire burn. You know, I think you just you're not going to get in there and do anything about it. So you just deal with it in the next 30 to 45 days or later. And that's just what it is. But I would say that there was no catastrophic problem. Right? I think farmers are like, yeah, give me the challenge, you know, farming's challenge every day. So this is nothing different. We'll just figure this one out too. And so I think that mindset helped a lot. You know, it's not easy, but nothing is. So that was a couple of the challenges for us at least.
Great, Nick. So you just dealt with problems as they came. Um, Thank you. Go ahead, Jimmy.
yeah, there's plenty of challenges. I could talk forever on this, but I think some of it comes like from what I mentioned earlier, just the youthful ignorance. But I mean, even finding the valves, you know, I didn't even know where those are at. You know, the last time we flood irrigated was when we established the field, and I wasn't even like aware of what was going on. You know, one was planted in '09, the other 13, so that's 12 and 16 years of age those trees are, and so we haven't even tapped into that system yet. And so I figured out, you know, they're 80 feet apart, and I had to get like a metal detector and find out exactly where they are and flag them. And then I was stepping it off, because you could step a yard, a yard, a yard, and I was kind of figuring it out there. And then we had a good idea of like putting a stick in the ground and tying it to a string and finding the exact distance, and in a straight line. And so and then the compaction on those things over that duration of time. I mean, chipping at that soil, it's rough. And we were even doing it in the rain, which helped, but it's raining, so just a bunch of stuff. And then, moving over to from we flooded the conventional block, and we moved over to the regenerative block and we waited for the district reservoir to fill up. We installed a pump. We hooked up we extended what the hell, standpipe, and then we installed a flow meter and connected the whole thing, only to figure out that there was 3 breaks in our 24-inch concrete line. And so we had to rethink everything and had to go to the other side of the field and retrench and tap into our drip irrigation system, and then tap into our flood system through that, add 2 butterfly valves and 350 feet of 12-inch PVC line, just to get water over there, because I did half of the recharge project but wasn't stopping to do the other half. And so that basin's filling up, and I wasn't telling the district to stop, keep bringing the water, because we don't know, because they give you a time restraint of like when they're going to cut your water off. And so we had that whole issue happen. And then after that, it's running through a system that hasn't been ran through in a long time. So you got to fix gates, you got to fix leaks. And yeah, it was very fun, very informative for someone like me to witness and troubleshoot. So it was interesting. Everybody was running in circles. So
Jimmy, you're telling me you didn't look at a SAGB chart?
what, SAGB?
Yeah, you didn't look at a SAGB chart to see if your site was, on the excellent for water recharge.
It's like moderately
Did you know that before you recharged? Did you know
Yeah,
that before you recharged?
yeah, both sites are. Yeah.
Nice. Cool.
Yeah, I don't know how necessarily accurate it is, but it is there, and they both fall within that, moderately
Yeah,
good.
we basically just chose without looking at the SAGB chart. I didn't even know about that back in the day, but we just know our ground is what is heavier than up, where is the heavier ground versus the lighter ground. And so we just kind of did a site selection based on, okay, we have a turnout on this site. It's fairly sandy. This would be a good candidate versus that one. That's a heavier piece of ground.
Hmm.
Let's not do that. So like within our portfolio of farms or ranches, we just decided internally we knew which one would take the water. And obviously we want to get as much in the ground as we could. So it's which one will take the most water the fastest.
Yep. Yeah, I was kind of constricted between, already planting cover crop in one field and then farming conventionally all around it. So just kind of finding some type of soil type that matched that cover cropped field.
Yeah, right.
But yeah, it was a process.
All right, let's move on to question number 3. Good stuff. Can you describe the biggest successes you experienced implementing on-farm recharge on your farm, Nick?
Well, the biggest success is just getting that under our belt one time, right? It's just okay, like okay, now we know what ranches that we have in our farms, which ones we can water recharge. We know where to get the water when it's available because water. This thing about on-farm recharge is like you can have a plan, but no one tells you when the water's coming. They'll be like, "Oh, we had a great storm this last weekend. It was 3 days, and we got 4 inches." Or then, oh my gosh, there's one more in the forecast. There's a river coming, and then like, oh my gosh, what's that going to do? And then all of a sudden, it's like, oh, we have water to sell. Water's coming. We
Hmm.
thought that was going to happen. Then you got to hurry up and figure out what the plan is. But like that was in 2022, 2023. So now going into this winter, we kind of have a plan. Like it's not so intimidating, right? Okay, not to worry. We're going to do this, this, and this, and we'll muscle through it, no problem. But like the general idea is how can we just get more water in the ground, right? And yeah, it's going to benefit our farm. It's going to benefit our community, right? So it's also a community mindset. It's like, yeah, I'm going to benefit. My neighbors are going to benefit. Man, if everybody just thought that way a little bit more than just, oh, it's just for me. Like, well, do I get a credit? Well, look, we're all in it together. So let's just, I'll do it, you do it, we all do it, and we're all going to help each other out. So I think the biggest experience, the success comes from not only the amount of water we put in the ground, that's awesome, but also we found a system for our farm, so now we know how to do it the following year, and years to come pretty quick. Like we know it'll still be challenging, I'm sure, but now we have a better idea of the roadmap to success, whether it's a 3-day run, a week run, or a 30-day run of water.
Absolutely. Collaboration is key. Uh, Same question. Jimmy, can you describe the biggest successes you experienced implementing on-farm recharge on your farm?
Yeah, I learned a ton, and I'll be able to apply that to what happens years after and on all of our other fields. And so that was definitely a success on my part. And the whole fact of even the mere fact of doing research on our land excites me because, ever since I graduated college, I've always wanted to do that. And here we are doing it. And it's just another incentive to recharge and do what's good for the crop itself. I always tell people you're investing into your water bank savings account whenever you recharge, is because it's like filling up that soil profile. Everybody knows it does that, but when that tree or vine needs it later in the season and you can't catch up during the summer, it could pull from deeper depths, and gain that water and that help that it needs during the stressful heat. So, I mean, it's helpful all around. I learned a lot. It got me to dive into it. It got me introduced to people like you guys and a good community. And I think it is important to keep in mind your neighbors. I feel like often farmers are pinned against farmers when it comes to regulation and legislation, and you're kind of put in a corner. But it is important to come together and kind of talk about something like recharge that is, going to perpetuate agriculture as a whole in the area, because we all want that to happen. So
Wow, that's great. So you sounds like the biggest success was just experiencing on-farm recharge so that you could absorb, the trials and tribulations that go into it so that you are equipped later, right?
yeah, just to fail and to figure out, what to do when that happens. And you fail and you figure out, hopefully, you learn and you become better next time. But, failure is an asset. So that's what this is all about.
Absolutely. So the next question 4, what was your field management strategy for applying water? And some of you guys have already alluded to this, or describe your method for moving water across the field under your specific field physical conditions in a safe manner. And briefly do it. I think you've touched on it.
So my dad sounds like Jimmy's dad, our dads, older generation farmers use a lot of flood irrigation to irrigate their crops. And my dad never wanted to remove the concrete risers or the concrete valves in our fields because he always thought that there's value there. Well, a lot of farmers, when they buy a piece of property, they remove those valves. And we always like, Dad, why are we doing this? But it's an asset to the field. It costs a lot of money to put that in, to put that conveyance system in your ranch. So we have them. We're lucky to have them at my dad's interest. And so we use those and leverage those for our recharge. But the problem is sometimes is during the normal course of farming in a single year, you'll break a valve or two or three at the base of the riser that's connected to the pipe under the riser. And so you'll have a leak, right? And you'll have, oh, this valve's on, but it's leaking over there. And so, I mean, for us, the strategy, it wasn't very complicated for us just because not that we had it figured out, but it was like, okay, never done it before. Water's coming. Well, how much water should we take? I don't know. How much water can you give us? Okay, we'll take that much. And then, usually we order like three CFS or something, 3 feet of water to flood irrigate a vineyard or orchard, but we're taking more than that. Like, okay, whatever you got, we'll open the valves, and then you just take the water, and then it breaks over there. Okay, go do this over there. Oh, it interrupts this activity. Like we couldn't dormant spray some of our orchards because we couldn't get back on the orchard in time because we're flooding water on it. Well, we missed a dormant spray. Like that stinks. but it is what it is. Like we're placing a lot of value on putting water back in the ground, so we're okay with it. But the management strategy was uh keep the water coming and and then keep it coming again and then just keep it on the field and then turn it off when the district says there's no more water and then just keep it there somehow.
Great. So you made some sacrifices in uh, the process of crop production to continue on-farm recharge. Thank you, Nick. Go ahead, Jimmy.
Yeah, I think
Same question.
yeah, I could summarize it by just saying the same thing, just keep the water coming, you know. Um yeah, you just wait to, I mean, it's very, very simplistic. I mean, I'm not trying to throw numbers at my foreman and tell him when to move the water to what check, you know. You run as many um, rows as you can, and you wait for it to get to the end. You visually see that, and then you move it to the next one. It's pretty funny because in my cover crop system, the foreman couldn't see where the water was, so he literally had to get out every time and walk into the field to see where the water was. So, I'm irritating him in a cascade of different ways, and it's
Mhm.
but and this is all new for them too, but yeah, they've taught me a lot, like flood irrigation. They've done this way before me, but yeah, field management strategies. Yeah, just keep the water moving. I think in the conventional block we flooded it twice. We had two different events we kind of ran through because we were working on the issues on the cover crop block. So, um, but and it still didn't take as much water as, so that was kind of interesting. But that kind of goes to the next question, I guess.
Yeah, Rogell, let me just add, like Jimmy's saying, okay, like if once the water gets to the end of the row or the check, you just move it. So you move it across the field. Okay, so then on this field that we put 9 acre feet on, we just did it again. Went back to row number one, hit the last row, and then did it again. And then, but luckily that tons of, like when you have a cover crop, Jimmy, like, it just takes the water, and that's like the best part. Like you happen to have a cover crop, right? Like that was like in our family business, it's not like we always have a cover crop, but that year we just got lucky. Like, we don't always have a cover crop. It just depends on if we get rain in November. Okay, like do you buy the cover crop seed before the rain event or after? Then you don't want to hold on to it because, so it's kind of a gamble if you have or have not that season. Um, so, with a Sigma, we don't want to irrigate in the wintertime for the cover crop. It's kind of a dry farm scenario. But man, that year we had a cover crop and it just took it. But you just keep cycling the water and just keep going.
Next slide. Next
So
question.
yeah, so I think I might throw us a small audible. I think it's so great hearing your guys' input, your experience, and I think we might want to open it up to the audience. And so if people have a question, they can raise their hand and ask you, and if not, Rogell can continue with the questions that we've already gone through. So putting that out there to everybody, if you have a question, raise your hand, and then we can kind of move into answering those. And otherwise, we'll just continue along with Rogell's question. Does that sound good to y'all? Oh, and how do you raise a hand? Let's see. So what you're gonna do? Ooh.
It's on the React.
Great. Yeah, thanks,
Yeah.
Rochelle.
Yeah,
Seems
sure
like
thing.
Jimmy's got it. So on
Yes.
that React bar, or Rochelle, if you'd like to explain.
Sure. So, kind of in the middle of your bottom bar, there's a React button, probably with a heart. And so you click that, and then kind of two buttons above, it says raise hand. So that's the way to do it. And it looks like we've got Dana.
This actually isn't Dana. I don't know why that name is on my Zoom. My name's Taylor. I work in the Madeira NRCS office. And I was just wondering if either of you guys saw any differences in your water table levels, if you monitored them before and after.
I'm not sure if we actually monitored it. I don't know. I don't think we actually did, surprisingly. Um, I'm in that we have some area that's in like a Gravelly Ford Water District, which is just west side of Madera, and they do water tables. And with all the recharge that year, we noticed as a district that the water tables increased. But on that particular ranch, I'm not sure, or ranches, I'm not sure. But can I also add though, NRCS, I thought being a part of the program, I think NRCS did collect data on some of our sites. So I bet they will have I bet they will have data on just our general area versus site specific, I think.
Yeah, and I was a part of the monitoring efforts, but I'm not sure if that data has come back yet, and also how accurate it was.
I mean, yeah, that'd be very interesting to see. I mean, it's not like I banked a tremendous amount of water like we did in 23 or whenever, that flooding event happened. But I know, recharge does happen and it happens extremely fast, at least in the shallow aquifers, because of when Tulare Lake actually came back. I'm in Joaquin out here, and so, there's heavy subsidence in this area, and we had pumps acting up, and historically they've never acted up before, and it was because the water table rose so much. We had to literally pull the pump out and put a new pump in because to accommodate for that rise and the water table. And so I know for sure it happens. I don't know to what extent this specific irrigation event impacted it, or where it impacted. That's something I really want to know from the irrigation districts. What aquifer am I hitting? Where is that aquifer going, and what is it helping? Because I mean, I'm building basins right now too, and I want to know where that water is going. I know it's going to the system as a whole, and I'm helping someone, but where exactly is it going? It'd be kind of cool to visualize, and I know you guys are kind of working on getting data sets, but and there's also pushback on the farmers giving you those data sets for various reasons. But yeah, I really have no idea, but I know it overall contributed positively.
Thank you.
Any
Thanks,
other?
Taylor. We did have another question in the chat. Sandeep, if you'd like to get on and share, that's great. Otherwise, I can read it out loud for folks. So, giving you a moment. All right, so this question was, are there any programs available to support groundwater recharge?
Yeah,
I'll
go ahead.
Oh, Jimmy, do you want to start? And then I can follow up.
Yeah, is it the ILRP or MLRP?
Yeah, there's definitely programs like multi-benefit land repurposing programs that can help with recharge projects. There are just broadly incentive programs within a number of water districts and GSAs as well. And so it varies a lot kind of from one area to the next. And so our suggestion would be to get in touch with your GSA to learn more about what incentives or programs they have to help with getting recharge up and running on your farm.
I mean, I think there's a
Thank you.
tremendous amount of resources out there. I mean, I keep looking. I'm like kind of the grants guy around our organization. So NRCS does a good job depending on where you're located, of course. That's why you reach out to the GSA and see if you qualify for those. But yeah, they're great to reach out to. I don't know if it's Equip or Water
We
Smart.
are located in Fresno area.
In Fresno. Okay. See, I wouldn't know exactly, but I know NRCS does and they do take a little bit, and so you kind of have to have a little bit of foresight and plan it out with them. But I know that MLRP is a really good one as well, and I know there's another one through the wildlife conservation or something. I could send you some information on it, but they'll have like a $25,000 grant for also repurposing and establishing habitat. So I can give you some contacts to reach out to and see if that suits your needs.
Thanks. I can share my email address in this chat box.
Yeah, also I'll just
Mm.
add that when in doubt, just locate your local farm bureau. If you're in Fresno County Farm Bureau, you're Fresno County, go to your local
Yes.
Fresno County Farm Bureau, then say, "Hey, I'm this guy and I want to do this." And they are really good about connecting you to other programs in the county or if for farmers. Farm Bureau is just a large general advocacy group for farmers, so they'll help quite a bit. But NRCS is a great one. Then when in doubt, go
Yeah.
to Farm Bureau, but also if you're an FID, Fresno Irrigation District, they're great too. So just open the door and walk in and start talking to somebody.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
Great. And we've got another hand up from May.
Um, Hi Nick, Jimmy, everybody. I'm May Cullenber. I'm a nut crop advisor with Cooperative Extension, and I'm in Fresno County. And I was wondering how much conveyance you needed to move water to your properties, and if you see that as being a barrier for a lot of people. And then I was also wondering, do you have flood valves? Um, Situated, and what would you recommend for people that have converted to drip, so that they might be able to, in a flood year, be able to you know do recharge?
Well, we already had flood valves, right? So that was pretty easy in the majority of our stuff. But just driving around the county, I saw farmers that would connect to their discharge on their pump or some valve, and they would put aluminum, 14-inch or 12-inch aluminum pipe, maybe 10-inch aluminum pipe with gate valves, and just go. Now you'll never be able to get in your orchard for the next 30 days or whatever, but that was a great way to do it. I don't know if you saw that too, Jimmy, but we had valves, and so if you don't have valves, you gotta get creative. You gotta we've done a few projects with NRCS where we've connected surface water to our drip system. So we put lift pumps to pressurize the water. So this is part of that. If I want to recharge in the future, like what can I do now? It's easier when you have time. It's easier than when you want to do it right now. So connect with NRCS as a farmer and see if you qualify and see what you can do.
There's another question in the chat. Did we ask this one? I don't think so. Did you see any problems with the health of your trees the following year?
No, I was actually really worried about that. I was making a bunch of phone calls because I knew I was I was like early March. Or it was like the 10th of March or something, and I was worried about like that's right when around the pistachios start pushing, and I didn't want them to push and be fully submerged underwater, and so I was kind of freaking out about it. But at least pistachios are extremely resilient crops, and so I think that, that was in my favor, of course. I still pushed through and did it, and I didn't see any detrimental effects. If anything, I think the benefits outweighed any effects that did happen. We still, this year is an on year, and so everything's loaded. And I can't tell you the yield difference between the ones we flooded and not yet. But that'll be kind of a cool thing to notice. But I don't visually see any drawbacks.
We were really worried about Phytophthora in our almond trees. My dad was really panicking about Phytophthora. So maybe May can even answer this better than me. I can, but basically the Phytophthora was a big worry, but no Phytophthora. We started irrigating, recharging early January, like January 7th or January 9th when we started. So we were worried, but it was still cold enough. The soil temperature was cold. So no, we saw nothing. It was just it was nothing to worry about for us.
Yeah, I was curious about earlier, in one of the earlier seminars that you were saying that you should do longer sets, rather than short intermittent sets. And I would have thought maybe the opposite would be true, so that you could prevent something like, Phytophthora, because the thinking with Phytophthora is that, if there's a lack of oxygen, you're compromising the roots of the plant. That pathogen is most likely there. and surface water. But it's if the conditions are right to give it an entry. And so when we weaken the trees with low oxygen, so like our understanding is with groundwater recharge that that it's okay because the tree's in a certain state of dormancy, but that you do want to keep the water moving. You want to keep the soil oxygenated so that you're not creating those anoxic conditions.
Yeah, I was the one who stated that. And just to clarify, I just want to mention that that was really about nitrogen leaching. And so the research shows that if you're doing shorter pulsed events, there's increased nitrogen mineralization, which allows it to be leached down below the root zone. But definitely need to balance that with crop needs. Yeah, something just to think about.
Thanks for clarifying.
Yeah, and if I could add anything, I have very little expertise, but I just looked it up because I was like, "What is phyto?" And so water mold, and so from what I've heard, it's always in the soil and it's waiting for favorable conditions to kind of attack the host. And so if you give them those favorable conditions, it's always a possibility. But I can't help but to think and kind of go off track in my head what cover cropping over a long duration of time could do to the immune system or the health of the tree, right? And you start getting conspiratorial and stuff. But I think with cover crop you're actually able to flood it for longer and have infiltration rates increase and soil water holding capacity increases. All these different things happen to the soil. You're changing the whole environment that Phytophthora is able to operate within. So conventional regenerative or cover crop system, I think there's a distinction to be made there, and I'm not sure exactly what that is. I was just kind of pointing out that.
Great questions. And seeing that so anyone raise your hand at any time, but I'll go back to Rogell's questions now. So. Did I get the right screen?
Yeah. Let's continue with the grow question number 5. How long did you conduct on-farm recharge? Roughly total days, application, and frequency on off. And how much water, acre feet, were you able to recharge in your field? So twofold question with ingredients, many ingredients. Go ahead, Nick, or
It was every day, right? I don't know, man. I want to say it was like 60 days. We did not stop. We just said, take it, we'll take it. And then we just managed the water. But I mean, total acre feet, like I said, one block was 9 acre feet per acre. So that was a lot of water. Then another ranch took, and we just, there was it wasn't like, okay, give me 100 acre feet. That's all we're gonna take. It was like, yeah, we'll take recharge water. Well, it costs this much. That's good. Bring it on. Let's just keep going. It was the height of Sigma, right? Like Sigma's kind of even died down in my opinion last like two years or so. But man, 2022, 2020, like 2 years before that was like Sigma, 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 Sigma. So when the water came, it's like, yeah, let's put it in the ground. And we just said, bring it on. So I can't, 2,200 acre feet, and then just managed it.
great. Um, the and Jimmy, go ahead, follow up on the same question. How
Yeah.
long did you conduct on-farm recharge, total days roughly? Then your application frequency on off, uh, and then how much water an acre feet roughly were you able to recharge on your field?
I think on the conventional block, it was like 5 days total. On the regenerative, it was 10 days. And so I think many different variables play a role in that, right? The spillover, the cover crop physically slowing down, the pump gallons per minute change depending on what field I was operating on. And so, one was like 1900 RPMs and the other one was 900. And so that obviously the rate of applied water has an effect on probably infiltration rate because you're the duration of time, soils in contact with the water is affected. But on the conventional, I did the math, I think it was correct, is 0.75 acre foot per acre, and on the regenerative it was 1.8 acre foot per acre, and I didn't really expect to see that big of a distinction between the two without having cover crop in for several years. And so I don't know necessarily what to attribute that to, but it was definitely a lot faster. Like, I mean, twice as fast, almost three is in or twice as fast in the regenerative block. And your
Hey, Jimmy.
grapes, I mean, they sucked up the water, man. That's crazy. That's a lot of water, man. That's
Hey,
cool.
hey, Jimmy, when you were irrigating, were you did you say, okay, I'm gonna do it for a week? Like, did you have more water available, but didn't like did you decide I'm gonna irrigate for a week or put a week's worth on, or like was there a limit in your brain? Sort of,
I was
how
gonna
did
put
you
as much
decide?
as I could on as
Yeah.
many fields as I could. And so, yeah, that lull that we had when we were fixing pipes and stuff, I was flooding other fields and
Yeah,
kind of,
you're moving around. You're just moving your water around to the next block, right? And then you cover again. Yeah, okay.
but I ran out of water. I mean, I really
Yeah.
wish I had more time to do that. And yeah, like my cover
Yeah.
crop field, I got half of it with water and half of it without. So I got to see exactly how cover crops affected when you flood. So it was
Yeah,
kind of
well, it's like once you realize it works, like, oh my gosh, it's for the ground. I can't believe the ground is taking this much water. Like, oh, we'll put more. Let's flood this. How do we get so much water that it won't take anymore? Like, where's the upper limit of it just won't take anymore? Like, it just keeps taking it and taking it. But I will add, there, we're over here advocating for like groundwater recharge, but there are some farmers in our county or in the valley here that they just can't. The ground won't take the water. Like they want to recharge, but the ground is so heavy that it's not going to do them or the aquifer any good, right? So it's almost like guys like us that have the ability to do so, like not that there's pressure to do it, but like, hey man, we can totally take this water on. Like it's going to help us and everybody else. So I don't know, maybe a little pressure to like put it in the ground, because
yeah,
we can.
it's all location and context for sure. That's
Yeah,
super
definitely.
important.
Soil texture plays a role in the SAGB mapping, percent sand, silt, and clay. The higher the clay content, the lower your infiltration rate is. The higher the sand content, higher the infiltration rate.
And
Um,
real quick, also your return on investment for that cover crop could also increase whenever you flood because that stuff shoots up, man. A lot of carbon sequestered, and that's going back in the soil, but going back in the system. You get the carbon cycle work and all this different things happening, and so there's compounding effect below and above ground. So
Next slide.
You should put some goats in there, Jimmy.
I'm working on it, dude. Goats are weird. They climb trees.
I know a guy with goats, man. Like he does it for a living. I'll let you know, man.
I'd
Next
love to try
phase,
them out.
next phase of sustainability, huh?
So
It's
before I go,
inevitable.
always moving forward. So before I go to the next question, I mean, I'm seeing that we just have 3 minutes left. Um, Wondering before we move on if anyone in the audience has any kind of last minute questions that they'd love to hear. Um, and if not, I mean, I think I just want to say thank you so much, Nick and Jimmy, for sharing your wisdom with us. Um, all of this great information. Um, a reminder to everybody that we are recording this, so we will be able to share that eventually. And we'll be sharing out a resource packet right after this event. Um, so any from other panelists, other folks, anything that you want to add before we wrap up this workshop for the day?
Just a big thanks to Nick and Jimmy. I have had so much fun listening to the two of you riff on your on-farm recharge experiences. So thank you so much for joining us today. And everybody in the audience today, thank you so much for taking part. And please do follow up with any of the panelists with whatever follow-up questions you have. We're definitely wanting to be a resource to you.
Awesome. Thank you.
Thank you, Nick and Jimmy. Farmers are essential in this whole process, and without the farmers, none of it happens. Thank you very much. Appreciate you.
You
You're
guys are
welcome.
awesome. Keep it up.
Hi, I have a question. Can you please share your email address so if I have any questions, I can reach out to you guys?
Yeah, I was just gonna email you right now. I'll put it in the chat.
Sounds
Yeah.
good. Thank you.
Of course.
All right. And I will share the QR code one final time for folks who are looking for those CEUs. Thank you all so much for joining today. Thanks for the great conversation, Nick, Jimmy, Rogell. Yeah, really appreciate y'all.
Awesome.
All right.
You're all very welcome to call or reach out or shoot an email. The best thing that we could be doing, I always feel like in farming, every problem that we have on the family business, someone has already figured it out. And I hate figuring it out for the first time usually. So there are a lot of people in our community that already has gone through that problem. So if you guys, like we've already gone through Recharge, so we may not be like the best resource, but we can actually get you through a couple of the problems that you may have in the beginning. And then it's up to you to figure out the rest of it. But leverage your resources, the best you can for sure.
Yeah, your dad and Jimmy's dad are experienced at flood irrigation. On-farm recharge or AgMar in the academia world is simply what? Flood irrigation. So there's a big source of information from the old school farmers who did flood irrigation all the time.
Well, my brother Brian is also a big advocate for for on-farm recharge. He was a big proponent in the beginning to kind of get us going on farm, and his attitude was, we'll take water every ranch we can, and it was like, how are we going to open all these valves, Brian? How are we going to? But we did, and then we didn't get it right in the beginning very very well, but we got through a season of on-farm recharge. So at least now we know that we have the ability to, and if we can make it a part of our farm plan, I mean, with sustainability and the way we're moving forward, I mean, I think farmers, we obviously get a bad rap on for some reasons, but 98% of the farmers in California are all family farms. And so I think we're going to do the best we can to continue to represent that segment of farmers.
All right. Well, I think we'll end it here. Thanks so much, everybody. Really appreciate it. And have a great day.